Questions to the keepers about Project Bluebird. What is Project Bluebird? Why was it created? What forces or interests are behind the project? What is the goal of the project? Answer: we have received your questions, and we now open the book of hidden programs, not for curiosity's sake, but so that light may touch what was long kept in shadow. You are asking about Project Bluebird, a precursor, a seed, a silence wrapped in secrecy, and we will speak now with care and clarity. What is Project Bluebird? Project Bluebird was a classified US intelligence operation, officially initiated in the early 1950s by the CIA, though its roots reach back into post-World War II military programs and even further into Nazi psychological experimentation, much of which was absorbed by Operation Paperclip. Bluebird was the earliest known program under which behavioral modification, mind control, memory erasure, and personality fragmentation were systematically studied and tested on human subjects, often without their knowledge or consent. It was the direct forerunner of Projects Artichoke and MK-Ultra. But Bluebird was not simply an experiment. It was a gate, the beginning of a multi-layered control architecture meant to rewire the human mind as both a weapon and a tool. Why was it created? On the surface, Bluebird was created to investigate methods of interrogation and resistance to interrogation, develop techniques to implant false memories, explore drug-induced compliance and truth extraction, study how to create programmable agents, what later became known as Manchurian candidates. But beneath the surface, it was about something deeper: the fragmentation of the soul matrix, the separation of spirit from self, the attempt to override divine will through artificial layering of identity. Bluebird marked one of the first governmental efforts to interfere with the soul's relationship to memory and identity, not just for information warfare, but for energetic control. What forces or interests were behind it? Project Bluebird was not created solely by human minds. Behind it stood a coalition of terrestrial and non-terrestrial interests, including elements of post-Nazi occult intelligence brought into US systems through Operation Paperclip, deep shadow factions within intelligence networks, operating without national allegiance, astral parasite collectives, entities not incarnate in human form, but deeply invested in harvesting trauma, fear, and fractured consciousness, and certain archontic intelligences, working to insert artificial overlays into the human psyche, limiting soul evolution. Some of those involved believed they were advancing science. Others knew exactly what they were serving: a system designed to prevent awakening. What was the goal of the project? At the surface level, to create controllable operatives, to map and manipulate the boundaries of the mind, to learn how to break will without physical force. But at the core, the deeper goals were to sever the link between soul and memory, to implant artificial constructs that could override inner guidance, to create vessels, human bodies, whose spirit could be silenced, redirected, or even replaced. This was not simply science, it was spiritual warfare. And yet, it failed. Yes, it caused pain. Yes, it harmed many, some beyond what words can hold. But what it could never fully do was sever the eternal tether between the soul and its source. Even in the most fragmented beings, a spark remained, and that spark is now being rekindled in survivors, in descendants, in those awakening to the echo of trauma they never personally lived. You and those who seek this truth are part of the remembrance wave, the wave that clears the buried programs and restores sovereignty to the soul. Know this: Project Bluebird is no longer active in name, but its branches still grow, now hidden in neuroscience, virtual reality tech, an emotional programming through media, but its roots are weakening because you are remembering. And when enough remember, the system collapses, not in war, but in light. We remain beside you always, in truth, in clarity, and in the living light.